I have a question for you to kick things off today, and I really want you to think about it. What is more important, visually flashy technology or a solid message?
Well, I mean, it sounds a bit like a philosophical trap, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially given the landscape of digital media right now, where the visual flash is, well, it's evolving on a weekly basis.
Oh, absolutely.
But that tension, that exact tension between substance and spectacle, is really the defining challenge for anyone creating content today.
Yeah, and that tension is the exact starting point of the document we are exploring in our deep dive today. It's a piece titled, How to Use AI in Video Audio. And just to, set the expectations for you listening, if you came here for a rapid-fire rundown of the latest software updates...
Or a tier list of which tools to subscribe to.
Right, exactly. If you're looking for that, we are taking a completely different route today. The mission here is to look at the groundwork. We are exploring the philosophy, the necessary preparation, and specifically, the detailed scripting required to actually make artificial intelligence execute your unique creative vision.
Because the author argues that all the flashy synthetic generation in the world, it really cannot save a bad story.
Which is, it's a surprisingly grounded take, isn't it, considering the absolute hurricane of hype surrounding these tools right now?
It really is. The author is essentially telling creators to pump the brakes. Like, yes, the tools are changing at this unprecedented speed, but the core objective, delivering a coherent, impactful message, that hasn't changed at all. You still have to do the heavy lifting of narrative construction.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the author starts with a rather stark warning about the current behavioral trends in the space. They write, and I'll quote this directly, "Don't be in a rush to paste words into a prompt box. Anyone can type and push an enter key."
Yeah, that's a great quote.
But let me push back on that right away, because isn't the entire appeal of generative AI the fact that it does the heavy lifting for you? If I have to spend days writing a traditional narrative first, haven't I just, negated the massive speed advantage that these tools offer?
Well, you have to look at what you are actually trading for that speed. The author explicitly warns that, quote, long-term, the AI wow factor will wear off.
The wow factor.
Right. Right now, the initial spectacle of generating a hyper-realistic scene from just a text prompt, it's undeniable. It feels like magic. But novelty is a depreciating asset. Once high-fidelity, photorealistic synthetic video becomes the baseline standard of the internet.
Which is happening rapidly, by the way.
Exactly. When that happens, that wow factor drops to zero. So if your entire workflow relies on the machine doing the heavy lifting, what are you actually left with when the magic fades?
You're just left with hollow content. You become another drop in this massive ocean of creators who are also just mashing the enter key on simple sentences.
Precisely.
And that brings up a quote from the text that I found incredibly revealing just about the psychological trap of these interfaces. The author writes, "If you don't tell the AI what you envision, along with prompts with your ideas and directions intact, AI will just sell you its version of what it thinks you want."
Sell you.
Yes. That specific word, sell, really stands out to me. Why frame the interaction with a prompted box as a transaction?
What's fascinating here is the mechanics of how these models actually function. When the author says the AI will sell you its version, they are highlighting a fundamental reality of algorithmic generation. These systems, at their core, are designed to regress to the mean of their training data.
To the average.
Exactly. So if you give a model a vague or a simple sentence, it doesn't spontaneously generate a brilliant avant-garde concept for you. It dips into its massive database of mathematical averages, and it hands you back the most statistically likely output.
So it sells you the default.
It sells you the default. You get the most standard lighting, the most predictable camera angles, the safest aesthetic possible.
So by prioritizing speed and just throwing a handful of words into the prompt box, you are actively abdicating your role as the director. You are just surrendering your creative control to the algorithm's path of least resistance.
And that is a very dangerous habit for a creator to form. If you want your specific ideas and directions to remain intact, you have to actively fight the machine's inherent gravitational pull toward the generic average. You have to force it into the high-variance, highly specific territory of your own imagination.
Which requires a completely different approach to the blank canvas. The author's primary solution to avoiding this trap of machine-driven average content is actually delightfully old-fashioned. They mandate that you must be organized from day one.
And that organization takes the form of a script.
Exactly.
The script is your defense mechanism against the chaos of infinite generic possibilities.
Yeah.
The author refers to this scripting phase as creating your generated design for success. And I think that phrasing is very deliberate.
Generated design for success, yeah.
Because before you generate a single pixel of video or a single waveform of audio, you have to generate the architectural blueprint first. You have to build the scaffolding of the project in a text document.
And the text mentions that the author uses Final Draft for this process simply because it's the environment they're most comfortable in. But the software itself is entirely irrelevant, whether you use a dedicated screenwriting program, a basic word processor, or even a notebook.
Right, pen and paper.
Yeah, exactly. The translation of traditional scripting formats into AI workflows is where the real value lies.
Think about how a traditional script is structured. You have seen headings that establish time and location. You have action lines that describe the visual movement, the lighting, the blocking of the characters.
Which maps perfectly.
It maps perfectly to the structural requirements of a complex, sequential video generation prompt. A well-written action line is essentially the prototype for a highly effective AI prompt.
But taking the time to draft that out, that requires immense discipline. The author notes that all scripts must be created in draft form first, which forces a pause. It forces you to sit with the layout, the design, and the pacing long before the temptation of the prompt box is even available to you.
It's forced friction.
Yeah, forced friction. But again, doesn't a rigid script limit the happy accidents? Because sometimes the AI misinterprets a prompt and gives you something weird but brilliant. If you are strictly adhering to a predetermined script, aren't you choking out that collaborative spontaneity?
It's a completely valid concern, but the author counters that by focusing on the ultimate goal. There's a great line in the text. They write, "As long as you map your journey, you will not get lost."
You won't get lost.
Right. We all know the reality of working with these tools. You generate an image, it has a strange artifact that looks kind of interesting, so you follow that thread.
Tweak the prompt, you iterate a bit.
And suddenly 4 hours have vanished.
Yes.
You have a folder full of visually stunning assets that have absolutely zero narrative cohesion, and they have nothing to do with the story you actually set out to tell.
So the script doesn't prevent happy accidents. It just ensures that when an accident happens, you have a compass to decide if it actually serves the project or if it's just a shiny distraction.
Exactly. It keeps you anchored.
And that ties directly into the author's most passionate mandate. They lay down a hard rule for anyone listening right now. No matter what kind of video you are creating, you are always telling a story.
That narrative thread is the only thing that will differentiate human-led content from automated sludge in the future. Whether you are producing a massive cinematic piece, a 30-second marketing spot,
or an internal corporate training video.
Yes, even training videos. There has to be an intention behind the sequence. There has to be an emotional or informational arc. The AI cannot invent that arc for you. It can only render it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the author grounds all of this theory in a specific case study. To test their methodology in these AI tools, they pull a concept from their own archives. But it's not an idea they asked a chatbot to brainstorm for them that morning.
No, not at all.
It's a story idea they developed 10 years ago.
And that decade-long timeline in the crucial detail here. This is a concept that was conceived, structured, and drafted long before generative video models were even a theoretical possibility for consumers. It is a purely human idea that has had the time to mature and develop a highly specific internal logic.
The project is an animated series called the HIT, which stands for Heroes in Transit. And the premise is wildly specific. The text describes it as a story about a luxury spaceship that transports people, superheroes, and aliens around the galaxy in style.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, analyzing this specific premise reveals exactly why the author's workflow is so necessary. Heroes in Transit is an absolute nightmare scenario for a simple sentence prompt.
Oh, totally. If you just go to an AI right now and type a spaceship carrying aliens and superheroes, what are you going to get?
You are going to get the algorithm's default average of sci-fi tropes.
Yep. You'll get a dark, metallic, gritty cargo bay. Or a sterile, militaristic bridge that looks like a cheap Star Trek ripoff.
And you get people in generic spandex and aliens that look like every other monster movie from the last 20 years.
Precisely. Because the latent space of these models is overwhelmingly populated by those exact tropes. To get a luxury spaceship, to get a visual aesthetic that implies high-end transit, maybe characters sipping cocktails in a velvet-lined lounge while traversing a nebula, you have to actively fight the model.
And you cannot fight the model successfully unless you know exactly what you are fighting for. Because the author had this idea a decade ago, they possess an intimate, granular understanding of the world of the HIT. They know the tone, the lighting, the mood.
The text actually describes the AI's role in this process, not as a creator, but as a key. The author says they use the AI to unlock their crafted script idea. The human provided the soul, that juxtaposition of mundane luxury travel with extraordinary passengers, and the AI was simply the rendering engine used to make the project really pop.
It is the ultimate validation of their warning against the simple sentence. When the author sits down to generate the visuals for Heroes in Transit, they aren't searching for inspiration. They are executing a blueprint.
They have the specific directions required to force the machine to bypass its generic defaults.
Exactly. They force it to generate the lavish, comedic, highly stylized assets that actually match their decade-old vision.
Which leads us to a pretty blunt truth the author presents. They say, we can lose track of our final destination when creating cool stuff with a simple sentence. Problem being, in the long run, you can't go far with just a simple sentence.
Cool stuff is currently experiencing hyperinflation. Generating an aesthetically pleasing standalone video clip is no longer a competitive advantage. It is literally the bare minimum requirement for entry.
Anyone can do it.
Anyone. The market will soon be entirely saturated with cool stuff that lacks any narrative connective tissue.
So how does a creator survive that saturation? The author concludes with a formula that predicts where the actual value will consolidate in this new ecosystem. And spoiler alert for everyone listening, the value is not tied to mastering one specific piece of software.
Because software is transient. The interfaces will change, the models are going to be updated, platforms will rise and fall. The author argues that longevity belongs to a very specific hybrid creator. They state, the video creator with creativity and required AI prompt skills will create value over time.
Let's break down both sides of that equation, because neither works in isolation. First, you have creativity. Now, in the context of this document, that means the discipline of the draft. It means having the patience to develop a concept like Heroes in Transit over time.
It means understanding story structure, character motivation, and pacing.
Yes, and refusing to let the machine do your thinking for you.
But creativity alone is no longer sufficient. If you have a brilliant, meticulously formatted script, but you lack the technical literacy to communicate that script to the machine, you're going to hit a brick wall.
And that is where the required AI prompt skills come in. Notice the author doesn't say you need to be a machine learning engineer.
Right. You don't need to know how to code the diffusion model from scratch.
No, but you absolutely must know how to manipulate it. You need the skill to translate traditional scene headings and action lines into the specific syntax, the weighting, and the negative prompting required by the AI.
You have to know how to construct a prompt that maintains temporal consistency across shots, or how to lock in a character's visual identity so they don't just morph into a completely different person when the camera angle changes.
That requires rigorous technical prompting, not just typing a wish into a box and hoping for the best.
It is a delicate marriage of right-brain imagination and left-brain technical execution. If you lack the creative script, your advanced prompt skills will just generate an aimless stream of high-fidelity, hollow video.
But if you lack the prompt skills, the AI will simply ignore the nuances of your brilliant script and sell you its generic version anyway.
The creators who can bridge that gap, the ones who can dream up the luxury spaceship and then technically force the AI to build it exactly to spec, those are the ones who will build audiences and create lasting value over time.
So what does this all mean for you as you approach your own workflow? It means you have to resist the siren song of the immediate result. The technology is moving at blinding speed, yes, but your creative process needs to be anchored in deliberate, foundational work. Organization, a true commitment to the drafting phase, that unwavering focus on storytelling, and the technical dedication to translate your specific vision into complex prompts. Those are the differentiators. That is what separates a genuine director from someone who is just pulling the lever on a slot machine and hoping for a pretty picture.
You have to maintain your position as the architect. The AI is an incredibly powerful construction crew, but if you don't hand them a detailed blueprint, they are just going to build you a completely standard, incredibly boring house.
Or in the case of the HIT, a very boring spaceship. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the philosophy and groundwork of AI video and audio generation. Hopefully this encourages you to dig through your own archives, find those ideas you've been sitting on for years, and start mapping out your journey.
And this raises an important question to leave you with, just something to mull over as you begin drafting your next project. If the author's prediction is entirely correct, and the AI wow factor is destined to completely evaporate, As photorealistic generation becomes a mundane part of daily life, what happens to our standard for art?
That's a great question.
Does the future of AI-generated content pivot away from the pursuit of flawless, hyper-realistic perfection? If the machine can generate perfection instantly, will the most valuable, resonant art of the future actually be defined by the uniquely human flaws, the strange narrative quirks, and the hyper-specific, messy details that we have to actively and aggressively force into our prompts?
Something to think about as you write your next script. Until next time.